Leonardo da Vinci was a genius shrouded in mystery. This very fact raises many questions about the secret messages in his works. Obviously, Da Vinci was not there at the Last Supper. He likely created some interesting dinner conversations for the monks who would dine while staring at this huge 15 by 29 feet painting on the walls of Convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan, Italy. A lot of credit relating to the conspiracy theories goes to the author, Dan Brown, who wrote the book The Da Vinci Code. As sensational as the book may be, it's still a work of fiction. Among others, the book raised the question of who is the figure to the right of Jesus. Is it the Apostle John or Mary Magdalene, the supposed wife of Jesus Christ? At the right hand of Jesus in the painting is the disciple John, claimed by some biblical scholars to be the disciple whom Jesus loved. But take a closer look at John. Many ardent biblical scholars actually believe the person at the right hand of Jesus in the painting is a woman, most likely Mary Magdalene. She's the only person in the picture wearing a necklace, and not a small one either. Many say that this shows that this person is most likely a woman, and at the very least not John. So when it comes to the theory set out in the Da Vinci Code, experts like Mario today are dismissive.
Is this John or Maria Magdalene? Is a very easy question, but it's a stupid question, because it must be John, because Leonardo had to copy the Last Supper before him, and John looks like a woman.
The reason why John looks so feminine in the painting has a simple explanation. Firstly, the aesthetics of male beauty in youths in Leonardo's time was decidedly feminine compared to modern tastes. A youth who was considered attractive tended not to be ruggedly handsome and burly, but rather delicately featured, fair, and rather girlish. This was particularly the case for Leonardo's depictions of such young men. He also did another painting of young John, John the Baptist, which, if the viewer did not know who the painting was of, would easily be mistaken for a young woman. So this sexual ambiguity in Leonardo's depictions of young men was because of the way young men were depicted in his time versus in modern time. The second secret is that there's music hidden in the painting. In 2015, Italian musician Giovanni Maria Pala had made the intriguing discovery that Leonardo da Vinci's famous Last Supper is more than just a visual conveyance of art, that it contains musical notations also. Each bread roll, in combination with the hands of the subjects, correspond to a music note, which translates into a hymn if read from right to left, as was the characteristic of Leonardo's writing. The result is a 40-second hymn to God that Pala says plays best on a pipe organ, the instrument most commonly used in Leonardo's time for spiritual music. The music piece can easily be found online and sounds rather ominous if you ask me. It's said that there's always a risk of seeing something that's not there, but it's certain that the spaces in the painting are divided harmonically, and when there are harmonic proportions, you can always find music. Although Leonardo was more noted for his paintings, sculptures, and visionary inventions, he was also a great musician, so him hiding a musical note inside his paintings isn't that far-fetched. The next secret is that there's food in the painting which shouldn't be there. Besides the bread and wine, broken and drunk at the Last Supper, Jesus and his disciples seem to be eating something else. Scholars are not in agreement on whether the party is having eel or herring, and this has been up for debate. Just as well if it's either, since they both have symbolism attached to them, showing that Da Vinci didn't just need to paint any food, but he picked the meal. Eel in Italian is arenga, which also means to indoctrinate, while herring is renga, which describes one who denies religion. Both descriptions are befitting, with Jesus' news to his disciples that one of them would deny him, not once, but 3 times. The next secret is that the painting isn't 100% Da Vinci's own work. And that's a true fact, as very few of Da Vinci's original brushstrokes remain. Instead of using tempera on wet plaster, the preferred method of fresco painting and one which had worked successfully for centuries, Leonardo painted on dry plaster, which resulted in a more varied palette. Unfortunately, dry plaster is not as stable as wet, and the painted plaster began to flake off the wall almost immediately. Although the painting itself was beloved, Da Vinci's tempera on stone experiment was a failure. By the early 16th century, the paint had started to flake and decay, and within 50 years, the Last Supper was a ruin of its former glory. Early restoration attempts only made it worse. Vibrations from Allied bombings during the Second World War further contributed to the painting's destruction. Finally, in 1980, a 19-year-old restoration effort began. The Last Supper was ultimately restored, but it lost much of its original paint along the way. Despite many restoration efforts, the painting still remains as a fragile piece of art. In an effort to preserve and slow down the deterioration of the painting, visitors can only view it for 15 minutes in small groups at a time. A maximum of 30 visitors are allowed to enter at the same time. The room is carefully climate controlled and the light is supervised too. All of that for the preservation of the painting. The next secret is that the Last Supper's Judas may have been modeled after a real criminal. It's said that the look of every apostle was based on a real-life model. When it came to pick the face for the traitorous Judas, Da Vinci searched the jails of Milan for the perfect-looking scoundrel. Since there aren't many recorded details about the Last Supper, not many of the claims can be stated as facts because no one can be certain, as Da Vinci is dead in his grave. But there is one hidden secret which I'm sure Leonardo did sneak into his painting, which no other artist before him did. And it was, he depicted all the saints without halos. Da Vinci's Last Supper was not the first painting of the famous biblical scene, but there is something unique in this painting that sets it apart from all the others of its kind. While the early artworks portrayed the 13 disciples as saints, Da Vinci's work suggests that they were common people, and that Jesus himself was actually mortal. In Da Vinci's depiction of the Last Supper, even Jesus does not have a halo around his head, indicating that he too was a common man like his disciples. Mario today, an expert on Da Vinci's works, asserts that by omitting halos in his painting, Da Vinci wanted to convey a message. According to him, the people shown in his paintings are not saints, but are instead simple men, indicating that Jesus too was a mere mortal. Many art historians believe that Leonardo da Vinci believed in nature, not in God. To Leonardo, nature is God, so he treated every character in the fresco as common people and not as saints, as claimed by the very church who commissioned Da Vinci to paint this very painting. And that is the real secret of the Last Supper.